everyone. This is Sabine from Puricious Health Coaching, and today I'm so happy to be here with my dear friend Jessica Fabrizi.
I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you for inviting me to this interview.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And I'm so excited to have Jessica here because she will share more with you what her relationship with sugar is and how she manages to live on a very low sugar diet. And I think that's so inspirational for so many of you, because the first question I always get is when people have decided, okay, I want to go on a lower sugar lifestyle, but what can I do now? You know, how do I deal with birthday parties, social events, when I go out for dinner? Well, Jessica has experienced herself actually what it is to lower your, especially fructose intake. So she will share more about her experience and some tips on what you can do for your life. And Jessica, more about Jessica before we get started. My dear friend, she's really a jet setter. It's crazy. I see her always online, on Instagram. Every time I see a picture or a video or a story on Instagram, Jessica is in a different place on this planet. Whether it is Singapore, Australia, the US, it's really incredible. And that's partly because of her job at Singapore Airlines as the PR specialist. Is that your official title? Or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, PR, definitely. Public relations, yes.
Public relations, thank you. But besides her corporate job, she also has a great passion to combine all this traveling by meeting new people all around the world and connecting them. So that is something very special. And that's also how I met Jessica and how I've met so many other people through Jessica. And you're really just wonderful in connecting all these people. And also special to get to know the story behind the person. And that is what I love, that whenever she travels, there is a picture, or she does like an interview, she meets people, and you will share something that was special about the person. So I love always reading on your Instagram about this, the different people, and really kind of seeing the world through your eyes. So if you want to check it out, your Instagram is jessica.fabrizi.
Oh, thank you so much. What a lovely introduction. Wow, thank you.
Thank you
So
much.
I'm sure your audience knows you already, because if I were to introduce you, oh wow, I would talk for ages as well, and I would say how many qualities you have, what a wonderful person you are as well. And I really like the fact that you love people as well. You like connecting them with one another. You're really interested in the story that every single person has. I think we agree that every single person is interesting, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I really like that, yeah, the story and what makes people unique, and what they can share with each other. And that's what I love about you, how you connect these people and just have them share their wisdom, their talents. And yeah, very nice.
Thank you.
You're such a beautiful soul, so I'm so excited to have you.
And so are you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Oh, my dear. And so my first question.
Violence.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Disney story, like hearts coming
right,
out.
little hearts and violins and so on.
Exactly. My first question is to you. Can you share with your audience how your story, your experience with sugar in your life, and how you actually changed your entire lifestyle?
Yeah, definitely. I think it started about 10 years ago. I wasn't well. Really, I started being nauseous all the time. I could never eat, or if I ate, then I had to run to the toilet, unfortunately. I was fainting a lot as well, like for example on the tram, because I found out later I didn't have enough vitamins, I didn't have enough minerals and so on. And what happened was also that I constantly had these headaches and muscle pain all over my body, bone pain as well, and of course like a lot of symptoms in the stomach and especially in the intestine. And the thing is, I have to share, I was pretty depressed as well because of these symptoms, but also because if the intestine is not well, it won't produce enough serotonin. And the thing with serotonin is it will influence your melatonin as well, so you won't be able to sleep either. So I was exhausted, but I couldn't sleep either. So it's a vicious circle. And I went to a lot of doctors and nobody could understand what I had. Then after a few months or even a few years, a doctor had the idea of testing my lactose intolerance, which turned out to be positive. So I stopped eating lactose in the beginning, but then I realized that wasn't it all. So there was something else. So then we found out that I had a strong sensitivity to gluten as well. It wasn't the celiac disease, so it wasn't a proper celiac disease, but still, I was pretty sensitive to that. Still, and then I found I found a certain doctor that is actually great, because she was actually the first doctor that said, you have all of these problems, it's not all in your mind, because a lot of people said, oh yeah, you're making everything up, and it's just, you know, psychosomatic and so on. And so I started working with her it was about 6 years ago, 6.5 years ago. And then she said, you know what, let's test your fructose as well. So, and fructose was positive as well. So all of a sudden I had fructose, I had lactose, I had gluten, I had histamine as well. And then we also tested some specific intolerances, and I found out that I also couldn't eat a lot of other food as well. So basically,
and especially what I actually forgot to mention is that you're Italian, your background is Italian, even though you live in Switzerland. It's like, I mean, I think it's very similar to my husband, where listening to those intolerances like the gluten, the fructose, the lactose. I mean, if you think of the pizza and the pasta and gelato. Like, it's like, oh, geez.
Yeah, I was having so much ice cream, exactly, in the beginning. And then I had to, you know, stop eating like milk-based, like dairy ice cream because of lactose. And then I found out about the fructose as well. But the thing is, I have to say, with sugar, so I stopped eating fructose about 6 or 7 years ago. But then, and I haven't eaten fructose since then. But the thing is, I had an evolution or something else that happened about 2 years ago. Because the thing is, when you have a fructose intolerance, you can't have fructose, but you can have glucose, right? So every now and then, most of the times I wasn't, but sometimes I was still doing glucose. I would buy it in the pharmacy, for example. So, for example, I would make my own ice cream at home with glucose, or I don't know, sometimes we would also bake with glucose, but every now and then my mom would help as well. And what so let's say the evolution was actually something, the new thing that happened was about 2 years ago, when I realized that I was constantly hungry and I had to eat every 2 to 3 hours. And then I found, and during the night I was starving, and then I Googled Always Hungry. Why am I always hungry? So then I found this book called Always Hungry.
Really? Wow.
By a Harvard professor and endocrinologist, right? And then I found out that actually it was about all of the refined carbs and all about the sugar that I was still having in form of glucose.
Including the glucose then as well.
Right?
Wow.
And since then, I have to say, so before I wasn't doing fructose, but then since this discovery 2 years ago, I actually stopped doing glucose as well.
Wow.
And since then, and refined carbs as well, but this is, I guess, is a different story. Now we want to focus on sugar, right? And then I found myself to be much more stable, I have to say. So I didn't have to eat every 2 to 3 hours. And when I had to eat every 2 to 3 hours, I had to eat. It was like I was fainting, I had to, you know. So now I eat 3 times a day, and of course I get hungry before a meal, but it's not that I'm starving and I could kill someone. No, I would have never been able to kill somebody, but sometimes I've never got aggressive, but perhaps like really anxiety as well, you know. Yeah, some people get aggressive, some people, when their blood sugar is not stable.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But I was anxious, like I was really like getting, I don't know, anxiety, and probably also, I don't know, this fear. And sometimes, I don't know if I've ever had panic attacks because of this, but you know, this was the feeling that I had. So I discovered that not only fructose was bad, but sugar was bad as well. In total. So
and
that was a game changer for me.
I can imagine. Wow, and so much coming together though. Wow, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I think it's so cool that you even mentioned simple carbs as well, because what we what we always teach in our program is that it's not only the sugar, it's also everything else that just really destabilizes our blood sugar level, that it's like this roller coaster of like this sugar hit and then like this crash, and that's when the irritability comes in and the anxiousness and since it feeds especially the bad hormones in, or like the bad bacteria in our gut, that's also when as we feed those, that's also when depression over longer term actually starts to become a symptom for many people, which is really a connection that more and more researchers have found out, more studies, but it's still very debated, because it's really like this kind of indirect effect of feeding the bad bacteria in your gut. And since the gut is actually your second brain, it influences feeding this bad bacteria actually then has an impact on all of your hormones, is what you said, the serotonin, your happiness hormone, and it really has this like downward spiral effect that is crazy because I mean, it's like one, it's what you mentioned, even cooking or baking with like some glucose or sugar, you know, it's not, you're not going to experience this effect immediately, but everything over long term then coming together has this impact. Wow. Absolutely. And tell me then, how did you go about it? I mean, I can imagine it was also quite a shock then to hear, you know, okay, well, first the lactose, then the gluten, then, you know, the fructose, and then also the histamine. Like, it's a lot. Like, how did you go about changing your entire lifestyle?
I have to say, thank God it was gradual. I mean, I wish that somebody had found out all of these problems just, you know, at the same time, so I could have solved them all together. But yeah, but it was gradual because first they diagnosed one thing and then another thing like a few months later, and then it took perhaps years to diagnose other stuff, you know, other intolerances as well. So as a matter of fact, well, at the end of the day, so it was very gradual. I have to say, so I started not having lactose. So that was kind of okay. Also because you in shops you can find a lot of lactose-free dairy products, so I think it wasn't too bad. And then I started with gluten, I think, and then histamine as well. So it's actually very, very gradual. The good thing is I am a bit OCD, so for me it wasn't too bad, you know. So I have the tendency to be quite disciplined if I want, just if I want. Yes, and I had to in this case as well. So not only did I want to, but I also had to. And I think for people that are not as disciplined or as OCD, they get motivated though the moment they start avoiding these foods and they see that they're actually doing better. You know,
That's
they
the
feel
best
better.
motivation.
Yes. Interactions with other people are better as well because you're not as irritable, you're not as depressed, you're not all the time in pain. You don't have to run to the toilet, so you can actually have a conversation and so on. You can have a proper conversation. Yeah, I think people. When they realize how much they can win, you know, by being a bit more disciplined, then of course they will realize that what they get is actually much more than what they are sacrificing. Yes.
That's so good to hear. I love that actually, because that's also something that's been so incredible with everyone that has ever done our sugar. It's like a 10-day sugar rehab program. And also you limit your sugar intake, your simple carb intake, and basically there's just a beautiful flower flew in your hair.
Thank you.
And exactly, the first step is to always stabilize the blood sugar level, because in that way you also start to have a little more control over your cravings.
Yeah.
And it's so incredible because even after like 3 to 4 days, we already see that people start to notice they have more energy. Their skin starts to clear up, the productivity, mental clarity. And then when you experience these benefits, it's just so motivational, and it's like really comes from an intrinsic motivational place rather than it's like, oh, I should avoid this or I should not eat sugar or whatever.
Definitely. It's so enjoyable, and I actually felt already much better when I started, you know, avoiding all of this lactose and histamine and gluten and fructose and so on. But I wish I had known before that my blood sugar was actually still unstable because I was still doing fructose and refined carbs actually. Yes. So I wish I had found out, you know, 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 11 or 8 years ago when all of these, you know, this diet started. Yeah, I wish I had known before about, you know, the stability of the blood sugar. Absolutely.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Same for me. I actually tried the first time I tried to go sugar-free. I think it was like 10, 11 years ago.
Wow.
And I didn't know that simple carbs had the same impact like as sugar, like on our blood sugar level. So even though this is like 1 month of like no sugar, I still had like the pasta and the pizza and the rice.
And the rice, the glycemic index of rice is so high, right?
I know, and I had so many cravings, but with my willpower I got through it. And then I started eating sugar again, really expecting this, like, because they said if you don't eat sugar for like 3 weeks, your taste buds change and then you never want it, it's way too sweet. But it wasn't the case for me, because I actually had been like substituting just all my sugar with the white, like simple carbs. So yeah, that was a pretty messed up experiment and experiment, and it didn't really help. So I'm so happy. And I think that's already a really good tip actually also for our audience. Like, because my next question is like, what is your advice that you would like to share for our audience? But I think the first thing, listening now to your stories, are like, okay, know that the simple carbs impact your blood sugar level as much as sugar, basically. So when you reduce sugar, don't only think about the sugar, but also the white, simple carbs.
Absolutely, they're defined, right? Absolutely, definitely.
Yeah, that's very good. And what other tips would you like to share on like the kind of practical how-tos, what you would suggest for people to follow for a lower sugar lifestyle?
What really helped me was when I stopped doing refined carbs 2 years ago. What really helped me was fat. I have to say. So basically, what I do in order to not to have these, yeah, do you like
yes.
it? Yeah.
Yes.
You know, to have all of these cravings. Basically, I make sure that my meals are very well balanced, so to say. So there will be carbs, but non-refined carbs. What I do usually is a little bit of quinoa, for example, because it doesn't because it's a grain and it's not a refined carb, and still the carbs in quinoa are not that high, so the glycemic index also is not that high. Yes, and it contains a lot of proteins as well. So, right? Yeah, let's try to do that.
Like
and
the lunch we had the other day, I think it was beetroot, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, beet-nut, exactly. Yeah, we had quinoa, right?
The quinoa bowl.
Yeah, quinoa bowl with some vegetables. It was yes, vegetables, and then I usually have vegetables as well in my meal, and then also some proteins and fat. Which I have to say, until 2 years ago, when I discovered through this book, I discovered the importance of having your blood sugar stable, and I also discovered the importance of fat, because before I had never really had fat in my life.
Wow, that's interesting.
I'd always avoided fat since my teenage years.
Wow.
So that was
also because of like because my husband, he always says that in Italy people are so scared of fat. Was that because of this like kind of what you read in the magazines, or was it more something that you were just not appealed to?
Do you know what? I think it was this this myth that was actually this to be found all over the world, which is if you don't want to be fat, if you don't want fat on your body, don't put fat into your body, right? This is what everybody thought.
For years and years, like to believe, like worldwide.
For decades. Yeah, I think it started in the 70s, so 70s, 80s, 90s, and the 2000s, so on for 40 years, and only the past few years, people have actually discovered that fat is not as bad as it sounds, or it used to sound. Of course, you have to select your fats. Not every fat is good, like trans fats and so on, of course.
Don't go for the fried stuff.
Exactly, definitely.
The healthy fats. Yeah,
the healthy fats.
Perfect.
But then once you, so I discovered fat and then healthy fats, and I started eating them, like adding them to my meal, which was already balanced. So non-refined carbs, but non-refined, or for example, and proteins, and of course vegetables as well, like greens, especially because of fibers. So they're important as well. They keep you satiated as well. But then when I added fat as well, wow, it was such a game changer for me. Definitely, because fat keeps you satiated for so long, right?
It's so good. I love it.
And
it helps balance your blood sugar level so well. Oh,
so yeah, so if I had
a really good tip.
if I had I'm not saying an addiction. Most people are addicted to sugar. I have an addiction to fat. Like I love fat. Yes. I love fat. You do, yes.
The avocado or olive oil or coconut oil, whatever it is.
Yeah, nuts and seeds as well, right? And
exactly.
I really love them. So if I don't have them in my meal is balanced, but I don't have fat, and I feel that something is actually missing. Yes. So I suggest that when you quit sugar and refined carbs, then you actually balance it out with fat. Because it is great if you avoid or really reduce refined carbs and sugar, you will feel much better. But I think if you add fat, then you will be much more stable, much more stable. So I think the two things would need to go together, and fat would really, really help you while getting off sugar.
I love the tip. Thank you so much for sharing. Yes. And is there anything else you want to share with the audience? Or I think you've already shared really, really great tips, like to stabilize your blood sugar level by reducing both your sugar as well as the simple refined carbs, but also to integrate more fat in your diet. So again, that helps you stabilize your blood sugar level and helps you to feel full for much longer, so you don't have these crazy cravings or like
Yes.
hunger in between meals.
Definitely, yeah. Perhaps another tip that I could give is related to traveling. So what I try to do, so when I'm flying, thank God I fly most of the times on Singapore Airlines, so I'm kind of at home, so I can really specify my needs. But then in general, when I'm flying with other, with other airlines, or when I'm invited somewhere like here or for an event or while traveling, I always specify all of my food intolerances, of course, and most of the times it works out well. But sometimes you won't be, how can I say, they will make you happy but not 100%. Like for example, they will find a way not to include gluten and not include lactose, but perhaps they will forget that you have a fructose intolerance as well, because most people know lactose and gluten, right? They don't really know fructose. So what I try to do is always to have some nuts in my bag. Right.
I love it.
Or for example, I really like it. So for example, if I have a nice meal somewhere, but I realize that the fat was not enough, of course I always ask for olive oil and I add it. But if I realize that it's not enough or olive oil is not there, then it's not available and so on, I will always, as a little dessert, so to say, have a few nuts that I will always have in my bag. And usually I would go for nuts that are high fat, like for example Brazilian nuts or macadamia nuts, or for example, what else? Pecans, or what's the other one? I think there's
Brazil nuts, or
right, these because the fat is really, really high. And sometimes if I don't have the time to eat, or usually I try not to skip meals, but sometimes, I don't know, or for a snack also, I don't do snacks, but sometimes, you're jet lagged and you need to eat something in the moment, I will always have some nuts with me. And in this case, then I will have like a more, how can I say, a combination of nuts that is even more mixed, like with some, for example, with some cashews as well, because cashews do have a little bit of carbs as well. You do need a little bit of carbs
and
as well.
Quite
so I would try
sweet even.
They're sweet.
I always find like whenever I eat the cashew nuts, it's like a dessert, like real sweet.
30% of carbs, right? But sometimes if they're giving me bread and I can't have it, then I'd rather have some cashews that I have in my bag in order to have a little bit of carbs. Yes. That's it. So I think having nuts is good for all occasions. Yes.
Yeah, great. I love your tip, and especially I love that you've also shared something very practical for people that are on a run a lot, or on airplanes, airports. Me and my husband, we always have such a hard time at airports to find just a healthy meal, and so we always also go for the nuts, and we always take our avocados with us as well, which is a bit funny because then we're in the airplane like opening our avocado and like with a spoon.
That's so cool! Wow, that's amazing. I've never done it. I have one avocado a day, but I've never done this. Wow, thank you for the inspiration.
But the nuts are really good. I think it's such a lifesaver, especially when you get hungry, because they're quite full, like filling you up, and so that's good. Thank you so much. I mean, it's been such a pleasure interviewing you and hearing more about your personal story, and now I've really enjoyed also hearing more about this beautiful lady herself, and rather than her interviewing everyone else. And so I said, really, people, how can they reach out to you? You mentioned the Instagram.
Yeah, definitely. If you would like to reach out, Instagram I think is a great platform. So my handle is jessica.fabrizi. And if you want to have a look, that's true. There's a video on my website that is dedicated to connecting. Well, it's called the 10 Commandments of Networking, but I don't like this word too much anymore. A lot of people are saying don't use the word networking. I think rather that's true. I should use the word connecting, because networking is more professional. Professional is great as well, but if you have a passion for people, it's actually, first of all, it's about connecting, and perhaps you can bring it to your professional life as well. So it's called the 10 Commandments of Networking. Nowadays I would call it the 10 Commandments of Connecting. And it's just 5 minutes, because it was at Ignite.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and this format where you only have 5 minutes and 20 slides, to present your topic, which you did as well, right?
Yes.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh,
so watch hers as well, And,
that's really. And what is the address of your website?
Yeah, the address is www.1degreetoconnect.com. 1degreetoconnect.com.
Great. Thank you so much for everything you've been sharing. It's been super interesting, and I hope this was really inspirational for you, so that you also really see a real life example, like there is life after, well, actually more than just fructose, after like sugar, the lactose, gluten, as well as histamine. Wow, that's a lot.
There is life, and I have to say life is actually better. I'm not referring to, I hope you don't have any fructose intolerance and like histamine intolerance or I don't know, like the other intolerances that we mentioned as well. But even if you have no intolerances, if you go off sugar, you will realize that life is much, much better.
Yeah.
And people around you will realize as well.
It's incredible. Thank you so much. That's a wonderful message.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, my dear. And everyone out there, thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.
Bye.